The Tuesday night crowd at Harlow's was the kind that made experienced servers nervous. Every table was full, the kitchen was running behind, and the bar had already sent out 2 wrong orders. Isabella Reeves moved through it all with the quiet precision of someone who had learned long ago that grace under pressure was not a talent you were born with. It was something you built, one hard shift at a time. She had been working at Harlow's for 2 years. The restaurant sat on the ground floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan, the kind of place where business deals happened over $40 appetizers and nobody looked twice at a bottle of wine that cost more than Isabella's monthly rent. She did not belong to that world, and she knew it. But she had learned to move through it without flinching, carrying plates with steady hands and a smile that never quite reached her eyes on the worst nights. Margaret, the head waitress who had taken Isabella under her wing during her first nervous week, always said the same thing before every shift. Keep your head up and your hands steady. The rest works itself out. Isabella believed her because Margaret had been there for 15 years and still moved through the dining room like she owned it. That Tuesday, the party at table 9 arrived at 8 o'clock sharp. 6 men in suits, the kind that costs more than Isabella's car. All of them loud with the particular confidence of people who have never once been told no. The man at the head of the table arrived last. He did not announce himself. He did not need to. The other 5 men adjusted their posture the moment he walked in, like plants turning toward a cold sun. His name was Donovan Harte. Isabella did not know it yet, but she would remember it for the rest of her life. He was tall and dark-haired, with the kind of jaw that looked like it had been cut rather than grown. His eyes were the color of storm clouds over water, gray and unreadable. He sat down without looking at the chair, without looking at the menu, and without looking at the other people around him. He looked like a man who had stopped noticing the world because he had already decided it existed to serve him. Isabella approached table 9 with her notepad and her professional smile. "Good evening," she said, looking around the table. "Welcome to Harlow's. Can I start everyone with still or sparkling water?" One of the men said sparkling. Another said still. Donovan said nothing. He was reading something on his phone, his jaw tight, his attention entirely elsewhere. She took the rest of the orders and returned with a tray carrying 6 glasses. She set them down from the left, the way Margaret had taught her, moving around the table with practiced ease. When she reached Donovan's side, he shifted in his seat without warning, turning suddenly to say something to the man beside him. His elbow caught the edge of her tray. The glass tipped. The water went across the tablecloth, and a small spray caught the edge of his shirt cuff. It was barely anything. Splash. Less than a teaspoon of water on white cotton. But Donovan Harte turned and looked at her with an expression that made the entire table go quiet. "Is this how you people do your jobs?" he said. His voice was low and even, and somehow worse for it. Isabella felt heat rise to her face. "I am so sorry," she said immediately. "That was my fault entirely. Let me get you some napkins and I can have the dry cleaning taken care of." He looked at her the way a person looks at a stain they have found on an expensive carpet. "I am not interested in your apologies," he said. "I am interested in whether this establishment employs people who are capable of basic competence." The table was completely silent. Isabella felt the eyes of the other 5 men on her, and she felt the eyes of the nearby tables too. Because his voice had carried in the way that certain voices do when their owner has never learned to keep them private. She kept her chin up. She kept her voice steady. "I understand your frustration," she said. "I will take care of this immediately." She moved away from the table with her shoulders back and her hands perfectly still. Only once she was through the kitchen door did she allow herself to exhale. Margaret was behind her in seconds. "What happened?" Isabella described it in clipped, quiet sentences. Margaret listened, then pressed her lips together in a way that said she had seen this before. "You did everything right," Margaret said firmly. "Some men like that come in here, and they are looking for a target before they even sit down. Do not give him the satisfaction of seeing you rattled." Isabella nodded. She was not rattled. She was angry, and she was careful to keep the 2 feelings separate. She returned to the table with fresh napkins and a composure so complete that even Donovan glanced at her twice. She finished the service without another incident, professional and efficient, giving him nothing more to work with. When the party left, Donovan did not look at her again. But she noticed that he paused at the door for just a moment. The pause was directed at nothing in particular except the space where she had been standing. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself the same thing 3 more times that week, because Donovan Harte came back to Harlow's on Thursday, and then again on Saturday. Each time, he was seated in her section. Each time he watched her with that same unreadable expression. Never quite rude enough to complain about. Never warm enough to call anything but cold. He ordered precisely, tipped generously through the company account, and said nothing unnecessary. On his 4th visit, he came alone. Isabella approached his table the way she always did, professionally and without ceremony. He looked up from his phone, and something shifted in his face. Not warmth exactly. More like recognition. "You are always here," he said. It was not a question. "I work here," she replied simply. "Are you ready to order?" He studied her for a long moment. "You are not afraid of me," he said. She met his eyes without flinching. "Should I be?" He did not answer. He looked back at his menu as if the conversation had not happened. But when she brought his food, he said quietly, almost as an afterthought, "You handled yourself well last week." She paused. "Was that an apology?" she asked. He looked up sharply, as if the word surprised him. "I do not apologize," he said. "Then what was it?" He considered her for a moment. An observation. She smiled at him then, and it was not her professional smile. It was the real one, the one with a small edge of something that could have been pity or humor or both. She left him with his food and did not look back. But she felt his eyes on her all the way across the room. And when she reached the kitchen and the door swung shut behind her, she stood still for 1 full second, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit, telling herself it was the long shift and nothing else. Across the dining room, Donovan Harte cut into his steak and stared at the empty space where she had been standing. He told himself the same thing. He told himself a lot of things that week. He told himself she was nothing but a waitress in a restaurant he frequented for business. He told himself he had forgotten her face by the time he reached his car. He told himself he had not thought about the way she looked at him without any fear, without any admiration, without any of the things he was used to seeing in the faces of people around him. He told himself all of it and believed none of it. Because on Sunday morning, sitting in his empty penthouse with the city spread out below him like something he had won in a game, he could no longer remember enjoying. Donovan Harte found himself thinking about a woman who had smiled at him like he was slightly sad, and he could not get the image out of his mind. The following week moved the way weeks do. When something has quietly shifted inside a person without their permission, Isabella went to work, carried her trays, smiled at the right moments, and told herself that the strange electricity she had felt during Donovan Harte's last visit was nothing more than the residue of a long shift and an unusual conversation. She was practical by nature. She did not build stories around men who had once publicly embarrassed her, no matter how complicated their eyes were. Claire, her older sister, noticed something was different the moment Isabella walked into their shared apartment on Wednesday evening and sat down at the kitchen table without, immediately taking off her shoes. "You have that look?" Claire said without turning from the stove. "What look?" "The one where something happened but you have decided it did not?" Isabella pulled off one shoe slowly. "There is a man who comes into the restaurant." Claire turned around. She had the same dark hair as Isabella, but wore it shorter. And her eyes had the particular sharpness of someone who had spent years watching out for her younger sister. "Tell me everything and leave nothing out," Isabella told her. She described the spilled water and the humiliation, the cold voice carrying across the dining room, the way the entire restaurant had gone quiet. Claire's expression moved through several emotions rapidly. Then she described the return visits. The observation that was not an apology, the smile she had given him. Claire was quiet for a moment. "He sounds like a man who has never been told that his behavior has consequences," she finally said. "He sounds like exactly that," Isabella agreed. "Then why are you sitting there with that particular look on your face?" Isabella considered this honestly. "Because underneath all of that," she said slowly, He looked at me like he was trying to figure out something he had never encountered before. Like I was a problem he could not solve. And I know that is not a good reason to find someone interesting. Claire turned back to the stove. No, she said. It is not. The next evening, Isabella was leaving the public library near her apartment where she spent her Thursday evenings. She had been working her way through a collection of letters written by early 20th century architects, a habit she had developed in college when she briefly studied art history before finances made continuing impossible. She loved the particulars of how people describe buildings, the way they talked about light and space and weight, as if those things had feelings. She came down the front steps with 3 books under her arm and nearly walked directly into a man coming up them. He caught her by the elbow before she stumbled. She looked up and found herself looking at someone she did not recognize, which was a relief after a week of finding Donovan Harte's face in unexpected places in her mind. He was about her height, with an open, honest face and brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which he did immediately. "I am so sorry," he said. "That was entirely my fault. It was equally both of ours," she said, steadying herself. He looked at the books she was holding. "Early correspondence of the Sullivan School," he said, reading the spine of the top one. "Are you an architecture student?" She shook her head. "Just interested, are you?" He laughed. And it was the uncomplicated kind of laugh that some people have and others spend their whole lives trying to manufacture. "I am actually an architect," he said. "Sebastian Cole." He held out his hand. "Isabella Reeves," she said, shaking it. They stood on the library steps for 20 minutes. Sebastian was working on a community renovation project in a neighborhood 2 miles north, converting an old textile building into affordable artist studios. He talked about it with an enthusiasm that was entirely unself-conscious. The way people talk about things they genuinely love rather than things they want to be seen loving. Isabella found herself asking questions she actually wanted the answers to. He walked with her to the corner where their directions diverged. It was a Friday evening, and the city was warm and full of people moving in all directions, with somewhere to be. "I do not usually say this," Sebastian said, stopping at the corner. "But this was a genuinely good conversation, and I would like to continue it sometime. Would you want to get coffee?" Isabella smiled. The real smile, the one with the slight edge. "Yes," she said. "I would." They exchanged numbers on the corner and went their separate ways. Isabella walked the 6 blocks home feeling lighter than she had in weeks. And she was honest enough with herself to recognize that the lightness came partly from Sebastian's easy warmth, and partly from the relief of wanting someone who seemed entirely uncomplicated. She did not. Think about Donovan Harte once on that walk home. Donovan, however, was thinking about her. He had a property meeting that evening that ran long, and afterward his driver took the route through Midtown that passed 3 blocks from Harlow's, did not ask the driver to stop. He told himself he had no reason to. But when the car paused at a red light on the corner of 42nd, he looked out the window and saw her. Isabella was standing at the corner with a man he did not recognize. She was laughing at something the man had just said, her head tilted back slightly, her books pressed against her chest. The man was watching her laugh with the expression of someone who had just discovered something wonderful. Donovan felt the air leave his lungs in a way. That had nothing to do with breathing. The light changed. The car moved. Isabella disappeared behind him. He sat very still for the rest of the ride home. He told himself the tightness in his chest was the result of a difficult meeting and nothing more. He told himself it twice, and then stopped because he was a man who had built an empire, partly on the foundation of knowing when he was lying to himself. Patrick called that evening. His older brother was the only person on earth who spoke to Donovan without calculation, which Donovan both valued and found deeply inconvenient. "You sound strange," Patrick said. "I am fine. You sound like you did when you lost the Hendricks contract 3 years ago." That particular kind of quiet. Donovan said nothing for a moment. "There is a woman," he finally said, because there was no point in being indirect with Patrick. Patrick was silent for a full 3 seconds, which was an eternity for him. "A woman," he repeated. "Who is she?" "A waitress at Harlow's." Another silence. And I treated her badly the first time I met her, Donovan said. He said it flatly, the way he said everything, but the words cost him something. How badly? Publicly, he said, and without cause. Patrick exhaled. Donovan, what is wrong with you? I am trying to determine that myself. Does she know you are interested? She knows I come back to her section, Donovan said. She is smart enough to have noticed. But tonight I saw her with another man, and she was laughing in a way she has never laughed anywhere near me. And I am sitting here in this apartment trying to understand why that feels worse than anything that has happened to me in years. Patrick was quiet for a long moment. I will tell you why, he said finally. Because you have spent so long using your money and your position to keep people at a distance that you have forgotten what it feels like when someone is not impressed by any of it. She is not afraid of you, and she is not trying to get anything from you, and that means she is the first real thing you have encountered in longer than you want to admit. Donovan looked out at the city. The lights were endless and cold. What do I do? He asked, and the question cost him more than the admission had. You stop humiliating people and start being honest. Patrick said simply. And you accept that she might have already found someone better. The call ended. Donovan sat with the silence for a long time. 3 days later, he walked into Harlow's on a Monday evening when the restaurant was quieter. Isabella was there. She came to his table with her notepad and her professional expression, and he looked at her directly. I owe you an apology, said before she could speak. She blinked. She had not expected that. What I said to you the first evening was inexcusable, he continued. I was having a difficult day, and I took it out on you in a way that was cruel and public and wrong. I am sorry. Isabella studied him carefully. She had learned to read people in the 2 years she had worked there, reading the difference between genuine and performed, between regret and inconvenience. She looked at Donovan Harte for a long, quiet moment. Thank you, she said. I appreciate that. She took his order and walked away, and he watched her go with the particular feeling of a man who has done the right thing and discovered it is not sufficient, because 2 tables over, Sebastian Cole was sitting with a colleague. And when Isabella passed his table, she stopped, and they spoke briefly, warmly. With the easy familiarity of people who have recently discovered they enjoy each other, Sebastian touched her hand briefly when he laughed at something she said. Donovan watched every second of it. His jaw tightened. His hand pressed flat against the white tablecloth. He recognized the feeling now. He had named it in his empty apartment 3 nights ago. It was not just jealousy. It was the particular grief of a man watching someone else offer freely the things he had never learned how to give. Sebastian touched Isabella's hand, and she did not pull away. And Donovan understood with sudden and terrible clarity that he had not just lost something he wanted. He had lost something he needed, and he had no one to blame but the version of himself that had stood in this same restaurant 3 weeks ago and made a young woman feel small in front of a room full of strangers. He left before dessert. The city outside was bright and indifferent. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the noise of Manhattan washing over him, made himself a promise he was not sure he knew how to keep. He was going to be better. Not for a deal, not for a strategy. For the first time in longer than he could remember, for something that actually mattered. The city had a way of making people feel both enormous and invisible at the same time. And for the first time in his adult life, Donovan Harte understood what that felt like from the wrong side of it. He had always been the kind of man that rooms adjusted themselves around. Conversations shifted when he entered. People straightened their backs and chose their words carefully. He had built that reality deliberately and maintained it without mercy. And somewhere along the way, he had confused being feared with being powerful and being alone with being strong. Walking back into his penthouse that Monday night, after watching Sebastian touch Isabella's hand, Donovan sat down on the edge of his couch and did not move for a long time. The apartment was the kind of beautiful that interior designers create for people who have everything except warmth. Clean lines, expensive materials, a view of the city that most people would consider breathtaking. Donovan looked at it and felt nothing except the specific hollowness of a man who has spent years filling his life with the wrong things and is only now beginning to understand the inventory. He called Patrick the next morning. I need to know how to do this, said without preamble. Patrick, who had been waiting for this call for approximately a decade, did not say "I told you so." That was one of the things Donovan had always respected about his brother. He simply said, "Start by asking yourself what you actually want. Not what you want to win. What you want." Donovan was quiet for a moment. "I want her to be safe around me," he said finally. "I want to be the kind of man she does not have to protect herself from." Patrick exhaled softly. "That is the most honest thing you have said to me in years. It is the most honest thing I have said to myself," Donovan replied. He did not go back to Harlow's that week. He had spent enough time in that restaurant using Isabella's professional obligation to be present as a substitute for the actual work of becoming someone worth being present for. Instead, he sat with Patrick over dinner on Thursday evening and talked in a way. The two of them had not talked since they were young men in a much smaller apartment in New Jersey, before the money and the distance and the careful armor that Donovan had built around every soft part of himself. Patrick told him something their father used to say, something Donovan had dismissed as sentiment for most of his adult life. "The measure of a man is not what he builds," their father had said. "It is what he refuses to destroy." Donovan thought about that for a long time. Meanwhile, Isabella was having her second coffee with Sebastian on a Saturday afternoon at a small place near the library where they had met. Sebastian had brought photographs of the textile building renovation project, spreading them across the small table with the enthusiasm of someone sharing something precious. Isabella leaned over them with genuine interest, asking about the load-bearing walls and the original window frames, and Sebastian watched her with the warm, uncomplicated affection of a man who had found someone worth paying attention to. "You should come see it sometime," he said. The building itself. "The photographs do not do it justice." "I would really like that," Isabella said, and meant it. She liked Sebastian. She liked him clearly and without confusion. He was kind in a way that felt structural rather than performed. The way certain buildings are beautiful not because of decoration, but because of the integrity of what holds them up. He made her feel visible in the best way, seen rather than evaluated, present rather than useful. And yet, she did not talk about Donovan to Sebastian. She barely talked about him to Claire, but she thought about him in the quiet spaces of her day, turning the memory of his apology over in her mind, the way you turn a stone over to see what is underneath. She had been working at Harlow's long enough to know the difference between a man who apologizes because he wants something and a man who apologizes because he has looked at himself honestly and not liked what he found. Donovan's apology had felt like the second kind, uncomfortable and unpolished and real. She did not know what to do with that, so she held it carefully and kept moving. The following Friday evening, the restaurant was hosting a small private event in the back room, a celebration for a publishing company's anniversary. Isabella was working the main floor with Margaret when she looked up and saw Donovan walk in. He was alone. He was always alone, she realized, thinking back over every visit. Always in a group for business, or entirely by himself. Never with anyone who seemed to matter to him personally. He was seated at a table near the window. Isabella approached with her notepad, and he looked up at her with an expression she had not seen on his face before. It was not the cold evaluation of their first meeting. It was not the careful, controlled apology of Monday. It was something quieter and more uncertain. The expression of a man standing at the edge of something he cannot calculate his way across. "How are you?" he asked, not as a pleasantry, as an actual question. She paused. "I am well," she said. And then, because something in his face invited honesty, she added, "It has been a good week." He nodded. "I am glad," he said. He said it simply, without layers, and she believed him. She took his order, and as she turned to leave, he said her name. "Isabella." She stopped and looked back. "I am not going to keep coming in here and making things uncomfortable for you," he said. "That is not what I want to do. But I would like to ask you something, and I want you to know that whatever you answer, I will respect it completely." She turned to face him fully. "Go ahead," she said. He looked at her steadily. "Would you be willing to have a conversation with me somewhere that is not your workplace? Not dinner. Not anything with expectations attached to it. Just a conversation between two people." I would like you to know who I actually am rather than who you have seen me be in here." Isabella looked at him for a long moment. The dining room moved around them, glasses and cutlery, and the low murmur of other people's evenings. She thought about Sebastian, who was good and warm and uncomplicated. She thought about Claire telling her that some men come in looking for a target. She thought about Margaret saying, "Keep your head up and your hands steady." She thought about the apology and the way Donovan had looked sitting alone at his table every single visit. A man surrounded by a life he had built specifically to keep people out. And the way he was looking at her right now, like someone who had finally decided that the walls cost more than they protected. "Coffee," she said. "1 hour, somewhere public. And you let me talk as much as you do?" Something shifted in his face. Relief, and something that looked very much like gratitude. "Yes," he said. "Absolutely." They met the following Sunday morning at a coffee shop, 3 blocks from the library. Donovan arrived first, which surprised her. He was sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees already ordered, and he stood up when she walked in, which surprised her even more. They talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. He told her about growing up in New Jersey with Patrick and their father, a man who worked construction and never once complained about it. He told her about the hunger that had driven him through his 20s, the absolute terror of poverty that had calcified somewhere along the way into something colder and harder than ambition. He told her that he had spent so long learning to be untouchable that he had forgotten. Untouchable and unreachable were not the same thing. Isabella told him about her mother, who had worked 2 jobs for most of Isabella's childhood and still found time to read to her every night. She told him about the art history degree she had started and could not finish. She told him about the letters of the Sullivan School architects and why she loved them. She told him that the night he humiliated her, she had cried in the walk-in refrigerator for 4 minutes and then washed. Her face had gone back out because she had learned from her mother that you do not let other people's smallness make you. Small Donovan was quiet after she said that. He looked at the table and then back at her. "I am ashamed of that," he said plainly. "I want you to know that I understand exactly what I did, and I do not excuse it." "I know," she said. "I can tell." He looked at her. "How?" "Because men who are not ashamed do not look the way you look right now," she said. He asked about Sebastian. He asked directly, which she respected. She answered directly, which she could see cost him something to hear. She told him that Sebastian was a good man who had been kind to her at a moment when kindness mattered. She did not tell Donovan what to do with that information. She let him sit with it. He sat with it quietly for a moment, and then he said, "He deserves you more than I do right now. I know that. I am not asking you to ignore that. I am asking you for the chance to close the distance." Isabella looked at him for a long time. Outside the coffee shop window, the Sunday city was gentle and unhurried. People walking dogs and carrying groceries and living their ordinary, careful lives. "I am not a prize," she said. "I am not something you win by saying the right things. I know that," he said immediately, "and I am not going to stop seeing someone who has been good to me because a man who was once unkind to me has decided to improve," she continued. "That is not how this works." "I understand," he said, and his voice was steady, and his eyes did not waver. "I am not asking you to. I am asking you to let me show you over time who I can be. Not in a restaurant where you are working and I have the advantage. In real life, where neither of us has an advantage and we are just 2 people figuring out if they make sense together." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I will not make you any promises today, Donovan." "I am not asking for promises," he said. "Just honesty." "Then honestly," she said, standing up and wrapping her coat around her. "This was a better conversation than I expected, and I am willing to have another one." He stood up too. He did not reach for her hand or close the distance between them. He simply looked at her with the full weight of a man who understood exactly what he was being given and intended not to waste it. "Thank you," he said quietly. She nodded and walked out into the Sunday morning. She allowed herself one small smile on the sidewalk where he could not see it. Inside, Donovan sat back down. He picked up his coffee cup and looked out the window and watched. Isabella walked up the street with her coat pulled close and her head up. Moving through the city with the particular grace of a woman who has survived more than she has been given credit for and knows her own worth completely. He thought about what Patrick had said. The measure of a man is not what he builds. It is what he refuses to destroy. He had already done the destruction. He understood that. There was no revision of the past available to him, no deal he could close, no building he could buy that would undo the minutes. He had spent making a good woman feel less than she was in a room full of strangers, but the future was still unwritten. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Donovan Harte was not afraid of something he could not control. He was grateful for it. He paid for the coffees and walked out into the city. He called Patrick. "How did it go?" Patrick asked. "She is remarkable," Donovan said simply. And I have a great deal of work to do on myself before I deserve to be in the same sentence as her." Patrick laughed, warm and genuine. "That," he said, "is exactly the right answer." 3 months later, on a Thursday evening in October, when the city had turned gold and cool, Isabella and Donovan walked together through the neighborhood where Sebastian's textile building renovation had recently been completed. Sebastian had invited Isabella to the opening event, and she had asked Donovan to come with her. He had said yes without hesitation. Sebastian met them at the door. He shook Donovan's hand with the straightforward dignity of a man who has no performance to give and no score to settle. The two men looked at each other for a moment with the honest acknowledgement of people who have both cared for the same person in different ways and are mature enough to respect that. Inside, the building was extraordinary. Original brick walls alongside clean modern lines, the old windows flooding the space with warm evening light. Isabella walked through it slowly, taking everything in, and Donovan walked beside her and watched her face. She looked at him after a moment. "What are you looking at?" "You," he said. "The way you look at beautiful things." She shook her head slightly, but she was smiling, the real smile, the one with the slight edge of something warm and certain. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. Outside the windows, the city spread in every direction. It's vast and complicated and full of people working out who they were supposed to be to each other. Inside, in the warm light of a building that had been broken down and remade into something better than it had been before, two people stood together holding on to something that had cost them both something real. It was not a perfect beginning. It was an honest one. And for Isabella Reeves, who had learned from her mother that honest things are the only ones worth keeping, it was more than enough.
As this story comes to a close, it leaves behind something more than just entertainment. Stories like this often mirror the complicated emotions people face in real life. Love, pride, misunderstanding, ambition, and sometimes regret. When powerful personalities collide, even the smallest movement can lead to consequences no one expected. But now the story belongs to you as much as it belongs to the characters. What did you think about the choices they made? Do you believe the ending was fair? Or would you have handled the situation differently if you were in their place? Every viewer brings a different perspective, and your thoughts might reveal a side of the story others never considered. I had really liked to hear your opinion, so take a moment and share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story kept you engaged or made you reflect on relationships and life decisions, please take a second to press the like button. It's a simple way to support the channel and helps this story reach more viewers who enjoy emotional storytelling. And if you are someone who enjoys powerful stories about billionaires, CEOs, and the complicated world of human emotions, make sure you subscribe. New stories are shared regularly here, each one designed to surprise you, move you, and sometimes even challenge the way you see certain situations. You can also help the channel grow by sharing this channel and sharing this story with someone who enjoys dramatic storytelling. Thank you for watching and for being the part of storytelling journey.